I initially had just one question prepared for today's guest, Belinda Richards, and it wasn't anything to do with PR. Yet, we just spent over half of this interview diving into why Belinda is putting most of her marketing energy into getting newspaper articles, blog posts, and even a radio show segment. And let me tell you, the information she shared will make you go back to your client avatar, look at where they go for information, and find a way to feature there. In the members half, Belinda shared her top tips for getting free publicity, and then we moved on to her approach for successful expos, which really had little to do with being there on the day. I took us well over time, but I know you'll be glad because the episode is full of so many great takeaways. Oh, and eventually I did get to my one question. How and why Frog Dog Studios is charging for pre-shoot consults.
Welcome to the Pet Photographers Club. Tune in as experts share their insights to help grow your business with higher sales, creative marketing, and kick-arse business strategies. Now on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Season 17, Episode 3 of the Pet Photographers Club. I'm your host, Kirsty McConnell, and today I'm chatting with Belinda Richards of Frog Dog Studios. Welcome to the club, Belinda.
Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here.
I said in my email to Belinda, how is it possible that we got to Season 17 and I haven't had you on the podcast yet? I'm ashamed of myself. So here we are rectifying that. I'm sorry for the audience about that. For the audience who doesn't know who you are, Belinda, can you just give a quick bit of an intro into where you're based in the world, what it is that you do?
Okay, well, I have a studio, as Kirsty said. It's called Frog Dog Studios and it's located here in Melbourne, in Yarraville. And basically I photograph pets for a living, like a lot of you do. And yeah, I do it all studio based. It's I try to create art-based imagery, I guess, rather than just taking a photograph, which we can probably launch into a bit more about that later. But yeah, that's what I do. And I also do mentoring workshops. I speak around the world, conferences, I don't know, all sorts of stuff.
She does all the things.
All of the things, that's it.
I would say most of the listeners who are familiar with you would be either from your speaking engagements or maybe from your awards work, which, guys, if you haven't checked it out, go and stalk it everywhere. I'll put some links in the show notes, of course, so it'll be easy for you to find. Today we are, here to chat about business, but carrying on from the conversation I had last interview, which was with Lisa Asp, we were speaking about the impact of awards on your business. And I feel like it's nice to hear her perspective, of course, but it's always nice to try to balance that with multiple people's. And I would say you're the queen of awards. So I would love to know how getting all these trophies under your belt has impacted your business, how your clients respond, if it has helped you get more bookings, if it's really just to give you the confidence, what's the deal with awards and business together, Belinda?
Okay, I'd say it's all of the above. So I originally started entering awards when I first opened the business to hopefully gain some publicity for the business, which worked extremely well. I was able to get my work into different publications, local papers around Victoria, Melbourne, and also different blogs and Daily Mail and just, different sort of things all over the internet. I think what that has done for me business-wise, aside from actually getting my name out there, has built trust and brand trust. And I think it's, even though a lot of the publications, they do go out internationally, so obviously that's not going to gain me immediate clients, having that kind of recognition on the internet when people go to search for a photographer or whatnot, it really builds a name for yourself. And that, like I said, that builds client trust. So there's that aspect of it that I've really enjoyed, that has worked really well for the business as well. I think the other thing for me is entering awards and pushing myself has helped me develop my style. And I think that's also helped me develop my business because when I first started doing this, yes, I wanted to take photos of dogs and that sort of thing and create lovely artwork for people's home. But now I'm starting to push my products even further to sort of align with the things that I do with awards. And it's pushing me as far as doing print sales and art galleries, and really sort of helping me to now I'm in the sort of in the 8-year mark of my business, and I'm actually starting to really push that further to create to be able to get the clients that I really want to work with. And I think the awards recognition has helped not only clients trust me so that I can now so for example, I do these grow up sessions where we do from 8 weeks until 12 months. Now, when my clients come to me for that, they pay me an awful lot of money for it, and they don't have any idea what their final artwork's going to be like. They just let me do it. Maybe they might have input on what size they want and what frame they want, but the actual piece of art is something that I produce, and it's individual to each dog. And that's the kind of work that I want to do. And so I'm pushing more towards that now, and I'm able to do that because I've got the backing of the awards platform and the recognition, I think. So yeah, it's sort of all intertwined together in a way. And apart from that, I really love the community of awards. I think that's what keeps me going back, and attending in person, stuff like that. I've made a lot of really good friends and contacts in the industry. So it's a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've got like all these notes I was quickly writing down, like, don't forget to ask her about all of this. But first, I want to just jump on that last thing you said about how now you've started to be, your clients trust you enough that you can really follow the things that you want to do in your business creatively with the grow up sessions, for example. And I feel like that must resonate with the listener so much. So many saying like, yes, I've finally got to that point as well, or I'm working towards getting to that point. Because at the end of the day, when we start off as photographers, I would say 99% of us do not start off as business people. We start off as creatives.
Yes.
And then we have to become business people. And sometimes we kind of have to shelve our creativity for that.
Yeah.
Because the clients expect consistency, don't they? I mean, if I look at your website and I see a certain style, when I come to get my dog photographed there, I'm expecting that it's done in the same style.
That's right.
So I love that, yeah, you've got to that point. I want to know, though, like how your clients know about all of these awards. How are you getting that out there so that they do trust you, so that you can do all of this creative stuff that you just mentioned?
So for me, it's all free publicity, and it takes legwork and building relationships to gain free publicity, but it's all free once it's just time spent, really. So what I actually had businesses previous to this, and that was one thing that I brought with me into this business, was that when I had a mobile dog grooming business, I won an award for running a really good dog grooming business. It was like 25 years ago. We don't need to get into it, but it's like, I know that at that point I was able to get into the local paper and the Herald Sun, and that brought me so many clients. And I kind of repeated that over the years that I did do that business. And so when coming into this business, I brought that with me. And the idea of free publicity is worth way more than paid advertising. So using things like awards and achievements and things like that you can pitch to publications and all sorts of different publications too. I'm not just talking about like your pet photography or your pet magazines or something like that, just your local paper. I mean, it's a really underutilized resource. You get on the front page of your local paper and I mean, your phone will just start ringing. It's just the way it is, getting in front of people. I think the value in that is huge. So yeah, I found that so important now that I've actually ditched one of my biggest marketing spends this year completely. It's usually cost me about $10,000, $12,000, and it usually sets me up for the rest of the year. But because I'm wanting to push away from that kind of client towards a different kind of client, I actually spent that money this year on doing a publicity course to learn how to get free advertising a lot. Like previously, I sort of knew what I was doing, but you do a little bit of praying and spraying and hoping that it gets picked up, whereas this has sort of helped me. I only did this last week, actually. So it's going to help me hone my skills in and relationships with media, basically, and other journalists. And
I'm so glad I asked you this. I was going to say, I knew that it wasn't just that you share on social media, and I feel like that's the trap that many of us go down. Like we get this award or something, and then what do we do with it? Okay, we put a little badge on our website and we put something on social media, and then that's it. It's gone. It's forgotten in a week. That you really are making the most of it. And I had no idea about that background actually with the dog grooming, and that you've brought over those skills into this business. So I was going to guess that, considering how many different publications you've been featured in, I would have guessed that you were working with a PR agent, but actually it sounds like you're doing it all yourself. Is that right?
Yep, doing it all myself. I have spoken to people who have hired PR agents, probably in slightly bigger businesses than what I'm doing. I'm a one-man show here, but it can be anywhere $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And the return on that, I mean, in a business like ours, it really needs to be a big turnover because, for a lot of people in a business like this, that's their entire revenue for the month, and even if you are lucky enough as a single person to be earning, your $20,000 or $30,000 a month, that's a huge chunk of money. So learning how to do it yourself, I mean, I've just dropped, nearly 10 grand on a 2-day course, but I know that money is going to come back to me tenfold because that's skills that I now have for the rest of my life. And, if I do eventually hire someone, not that I'm really in the market, really interested in that, but those are skills that I can then teach that person and get them to do that rather than hiring an external PR firm who's probably maybe not as interested in a client who doesn't have the budget like a lot of the bigger companies do. So, yeah.
So, okay, just sticking with this line of conversation for a little while because I think it's really interesting and something we haven't covered enough on the podcast. I think because a lot of people aren't spending time and energy, with PR or with getting publications. Don't mind me, guys. It's 7:00 in the morning here. So tell me about the SEO impact of this.
That was the other thing that I was thinking, yes, I've got to mention that, and then it went out my head. So the SEO impact is huge. So I have built my own website. I just use Squarespace. I'm no web genius whatsoever. So it's really not built for SEO. I've put in a couple of keywords here and there, but that's really all I've done. But having the fact that if you put in pet photographer in Australia, I am the first person who's going to come up. There's a handful of us that come up and you'll see that they're the ones who have done this kind of work that have gone out and actually got their name into different areas, publications. So the backlinking is incredible in that respect. I've never paid for an SEO expert and I've never really spent much time doing it, but having my work out there, I was very lucky to have a viral series a few years ago as well, which really sort of help boost that up the ranks as well. So it has had a huge impact, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, when these other sites, and just to clarify, guys, for the listener who's like, what are you talking about backlinks? We're talking about getting a link to your website on somebody else's website. So if a big newspaper, you mentioned the Daily Mail, for example, international kind of publication, they would have huge domain authority. So that means like Google trusts them basically as a legit site. They get lots of traffic. So if they put a link from their website pointing to Frog Dog Studios, that's telling Google, like, you should trust this website because we trust Daily Mail. It's kind of like this. And if you get lots of these, what are called backlinks, Google really likes you. And that's why Belinda is like top of page one on Google for everything in Australia. Yeah, I was quite sure that you'd say it was a good impact. I'm not surprised about that at all.
Definitely. And I was just going to say, it's just really easy. Like you see a lot of people spending money on SEO experts and trying to learn about how to do it themselves and that sort of thing. Whereas this was just an adverse, well, not an adverse side effect, but a side effect of just getting the name out there into the public realm, and I joke about this with some of my friends all the time, because whenever if you do get something that goes a little viral or whatever, you'll get people in Russia and China and that picking it up and you're backlinked all over the blooming world and they don't hardly ever get the article right, but you're still out there, right? Like you're on all these different websites and I mean, it's also then helps you to get more publicity. So, I had an award that's right, it was like in 2019 or 2020 actually, I think it was just during start of COVID. I didn't even win an award. I got a highly commended, but it was published as part of their publicity in Board Panda. And then the next thing I know, I've got Forbes in the States calling me to do an article. And so then Forbes, that's then seen by somebody in Business Insider who then got in touch. And it's it can snowball like that as well. And it's just easy, it's really not hard.
So I want to ask you how you're going about getting all of this PR. But before we do that, I want to ask about the client demographic that's coming from this, because not obviously the backlinks, that's one aspect. And that's more of a long-term thing, like I suppose, but for most people. But, you mentioned if you get on the front page of your local paper, the phone starts ringing. So tell me who, your typical client is that has called you because they saw you on the front of the paper.
So you will get all sorts. Sometimes you will, like when you're sort of doing this, something like the local paper or the Herald Sun, I would say now is probably not my demographic that I'm looking for. I'm looking for people, and it doesn't say that you won't get a client from that who's interested, but generally speaking, I'm looking for someone who's probably got a lot more money to spend now, doesn't have children, maybe works with interior designers, that sort of thing. However, starting off, that was an incredible way to just get people through my door and just keep the ball rolling, right? So now one of the reasons why I did this PR course last week was to actually be able to pinpoint and target my market better rather than doing what I was saying before. I was doing a bit more of a pray and spray kind of situation, sending out the media releases to whoever. Now I've learned how to do a bit more of a targeted approach to publications that are actually going to reach the clients I want to work with. So yes, it is great to get your local paper. And for the stuff where I'm, doing an average of $2,500, $3,000 per sale, those are great clients. My grow session started $10,000. So I'm starting to look for a slightly higher end type of client, I guess. I don't like using that terminology, but yeah, somebody who's probably got a bit more discerning taste, I guess, and is really looking for that individual specialized service.
So, Belinda, when you say like you've changed, I suppose, your ideal client, is it only this that they can afford the 10,000 mark, for example? Or have you also changed, I don't know, like the style of, what this client appreciates, for example? Is it really just as long as they can afford you, it's fine? Or are you also looking for something more like, and I want them to be super artistic?
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking for somebody who does have that bit more of a discerning taste for art-based work and something that's going to be individual and says something about their dog. I don't know how, like some people, you can jump on my website or whatever, but my individual grow packages, they're really involved. And at the end, a person gets a really individualized piece of artwork. So for example, if there's a German Shepherd one, which is probably the one that people might know the most, where we've got different floppy ears growing up as the dog gets older. Now, if somebody came in with a German Shepherd, I don't want to do the same for them. I want that trust from my clients to be able to create something that's individual to their dogs, not what they want to have a carbon copy of what I've already done, if that makes sense. So probably looking at somebody who's a bit more like that. But however, I don't think that's got anything to do with how much you earn or how much money you've got to spend. I think that people who appreciate that sort of thing is what I'm looking for, not so much the people who have, who are just like, yeah, money's no object, because it's over 12 months. Most people can afford to put away a little bit of money over 12, 18 months to pay for something like this. It's more about your taste and what's important to you in life and that sort of thing, I guess. Yeah.
So, Belinda, can I ask, how local are your typical clients to you? Are they from Yarraville, Newport, like western suburbs of Melbourne, which is your suburb?
Sometimes.
Or are they coming even like as far as, I don't know, the peninsula or interstate?
Yep. So I have clients from all over. I've got to say, actually, it was a bit harder to my local area. It took me quite a while to get my clients on board here, but that has turned around. So I do get a lot of local clients, but a lot of regional clients, a lot of people from Geelong and Ballarat and the Mornington Peninsula, like Cranbourne, places over the other side of town. Had people come from interstate, drove down from Sydney and stuff like that. So yeah, it sort of reaches all over the place. And I think one of the things that I have done is develop a style and that brand recognition that people are okay to travel. They're prepared to do it because they want what I'm giving rather than, what they can get anywhere, I guess. It's specific, I guess.
Okay, so it sounds to me like, I guess your radius is about 2 hours from your studio. Would that be right?
Yeah. Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Plus the occasional further afield.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked because the suburb that Belinda is in, guys, is like, I would say pretty gentrified. Is that how you would describe it?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I love it. It's like a country town in the middle of the city. So we're only a couple of Ks from the CBD of Melbourne, but it's where I'm at. We've got what we call the Yarraville Village. So everybody sort of knows each other. You walk down the street, you smile, there's dogs everywhere. People do have kids, but there's a lot of people whose dogs and cats are their kids. Yeah, it's lots of restaurants, cafes. It's really nice.
And super artsy, I would say. Super artsy.
Yeah, and artsy. Yeah, definitely.
That's why I asked actually where your clients are coming from, because I know that suburb. And honestly, like if somebody asked me where would be the ideal suburb in Melbourne to have a pet photography studio, I'd probably say Yarraville.
Yeah.
And so I was quite interested to know if that was helping you to grow your business. But interestingly, you said that no, in the beginning they weren't, your local people were not really coming to you.
Yeah, no, they weren't. It was very strange. It took a couple of years, and I don't know whether that's just coming down to a trust factor or, they sort of like, I've got this big blue studio in the middle of, it's sort of in the middle of a residential area. So I don't know if I pissed the neighbours off a little bit by painting the building bright blue. Yeah, it took a little while. I mean, I'd have a couple drip in every now and then, but most of them were coming from outer suburbs and Geelong, a lot from Geelong area. So yeah, but that's that's switched around now. I get a lot of Yarravillians now.
I think it's really interesting because even in like what we were doing, like air quotations, like what we call like the ideal area, still the whole like build it and they will come philosophy didn't work.
No.
It still takes time and you have to build trust. So yeah, I just think that's really interesting. I mean, now of course you've spent the time building the trust, proved yourself, you've been there long enough, and so on. But it takes time, like it's like everything, right?
Yeah.
I've got, oh my gosh, so many questions I've been typing while we've been talking, like don't forget to come back to this. But we have been chatting for a while. So I reckon what we're going to do is wrap up part 1 now. I'm going to save some good stuff like, the journey of your studio. You're doing these $50 fee for consultations, which I've got earmarked for chatting you about. I feel like nobody's doing that just for a consult. I want to talk to you about that, see how it's going.
Yep.
And a few other things, like you mentioned, your biggest marketing spend, you've just kind of want to talk more about that and where you are putting your efforts other than PR. But let's save that for the members. So let's wrap up part 1 now. Just for the free listeners, where should they go to find out more about yourself and Frog Dog Studios?
Okay, well, frogdogstudios.com or belindarichards.com. So Frog Dog for domestic clients. If you are looking for mentoring or any help with anything as photographers, belindarichards.com is the place to go. You'll also find all my artwork and stuff like that there as well. And yeah, the usual social things at Frog Dog Studios. I've got the handle for all of the platforms. So
perfect. And as always, I will link to those in the show notes. So you can just head on over to the petphotographersclub.com/the-podcast and search Belinda, and this episode will come up. Or I'm guessing the title is going to be something about PR, so you can probably search that and it'll come up as well. But let's see once I finish recording. All right. That's it for this part of the episode. If you are a member of the club, of course, you can continue listening to part 2 in the member zone or via your private RSS feed in your favorite podcast player. If you haven't sorted that out, guys, your private RSS feed, shoot me an email and I'll help you out. It's super easy. You just need to copy and paste a link that you've been emailed into your podcast player. And that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It'll just automatically update with the latest episodes. You don't have to go into the member zone or anything. So it's really easy. Hit me up if you need some help with that. Don't forget, if you're not a member yet, you can join today. It's now $18 a month or $120 a year. Club membership includes tons of perks. We've just filled the member zone with a bunch of extra freebies that used to be paid or are still available as paid, actually. So that's totally worth it. And of course, the new directory is up and live now. So please go and check it out and claim your listing if you haven't already. You can grab one for free. If you're a member of the club, an annual member, you'll get a free upgrade, I suppose, a premium listing, or you can grab a premium listing. Anyway, that is it for part 1. So let's wrap this up and we'll get started with part 2.
Thanks for listening to the Pet Photographers Club. To subscribe to the podcast, check out other episodes, and keep up to date, head to thepetphotographersclub.com.